What's up? Welcome in an emergency live Hoge Jahns episode. Our second Khalil Mack emergency episode. Much different than the first one.
I want to say I missed the first one. I was at a wedding.
Um,
Or did I do some of it? I can't remember.
yeah, I don't remember. We had to do something. Maybe it wasn't an immediate emergency. Maybe it was just an unscheduled podcast
Back
like
then.
that.
I vividly remember holding the door because I was an usher in my brother-in-law's wedding when the news broke that day, and holding the door to the church for people coming in, texting people with the Bears to get details on the actual trade, like the compensation and whatnot with the move with the Raiders. And wow, a bit different now. Now I'm just at home in sweatpants, still stuck in the pandemic a little bit.
Yeah, much. I think we may have done. Well, we at least did the one after the press conference in the closet at House Hall. It's been a long time since we did a podcast from the closet.
Yeah, we don't use that anymore.
Hey, one thing I remember from that podcast, though, vividly, we've brought this up over the years. Like, we both talked about and agreed that there was going to come a day where the trade didn't look that great, or that it was a contract you wanted to get out of. You know, it was inevitable. You knew that based on the deal, the money that was thrown out there. Just the hope was that somewhere in the first 3 or 4 years, you were going to at least come close to winning a Super Bowl, but make a Super Bowl run. And that's ultimately where the disappointment in this comes from. And I am not at all surprised that here we are in 2022 and the Bears are trying to get out of it or move on from the contract, because it was always going to end up that way somehow.
I think the surprising part, well, I got to say, I'll be honest, Ryan Poles did surprise me on this one. I think this trade says more about him, potentially his plan for the Bears, than anybody else. I don't know if you want to go through the intro and all that, Hoge Jahns, obvious shirts, YouTube, all that stuff. But like, this trade to me says more about what's next for Ryan Poles, or what could be next for Ryan Poles and his plan, than anything else.
Okay, it's a great starting point to start this podcast with, because I am still holding out. I don't know if hope's the right word, but reason that just because they're trading Khalil Mack, they might not necessarily be going through an enormous teardown. I think if you're Ryan Poles, you have to look at what you have, the assets you have, and what you could realistically get back in return. And in the case of Khalil Mack, you have a contract that isn't necessarily holding you back or hamstringing you, but it is expensive, and he's a player on the decline. He's still pretty good, so you could still get decent draft capital. I think your first reaction to this trade, if you look at the capital in return, you're like, okay, it doesn't blow you away, but it's still a second-round pick. And second-round picks are something. And now you have 3 picks in the top 71, which is much better than you were, 4 hours ago. And you're getting out from under that contract going forward, especially you're saving $6 million against the cap this year, but really now the books are clear going forward. So I understand this move, and I think I can put it in the context of saying I don't necessarily know that this means like you're ripping apart the entire roster.
My criticism of the compensation is, if a team was offering Ryan Poles a first-round pick, of course, he would take it.
The market's the market.
Yes. Maybe it comes to fruition a little bit later, but obviously he got a good feel for the market in Indianapolis at the combine, talking at the bars, talking behind the scenes. We know how it works. Adam, we know how it works. Those are different conversations than a lot of us have. Those are usually very private conversations amongst GMs only. And that's it. So he probably has a good feel for what the market is. And it takes the right team to take on that salary. Win now teams that need a certain element, a certain pass rusher, a certain blocker, just a certain element to push them over the edge in terms of being not just a playoff caliber team, but a Super Bowl winning team. So to go back to your point about rebuild, well, obviously the defense is rebuilding. you're losing your highest paid, arguably your best player. I'd say Roquan Smith is better, but the money says that Khalil Mack should be your best player. So obviously you're rebuilding in some capacity. My objection to the rebuilding theory is I hope that you're still building towards Justin Fields, building around him. Maybe just moving your investments elsewhere, because I feel like we've criticized the investments made around Justin Fields, Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, Andy Dalton in the past, whether that's the offensive line, whether that's the receivers, and rightfully so. We've seen that bear fruits in terms of not bearing fruit in terms of the production of those quarterbacks. Like, yes, this means a lot for 2023, but let's not write off what 2022 means for Justin Fields and the development that you need to see him take as an organization, as the general manager of the organization. Of if you're Ryan Poles, you still need to build around Justin Fields while probably tearing down that defense, which you're already doing by trading Justin Fields. Khalil Mack. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's well said, Johnsy. And I just had some similar comment. I'm doing podcast double duty here, double header actually. We just did the CHGO emergency version of this podcast.
This is your third one today.
It's actually my fourth, because I was a guest on.
I did see that one. Yeah, the enemies of Chicago.
We had a fun draft. I want you to know that I would have taken Rafi Torres with my second pick had he still been on the board, but I had to go John Starks first. So yeah, that was the CHGO Sports Podcast, which is only a weekly podcast, but we kind of blend all the topics together. And I was a guest. That one's hosted by Kevin Kadick. It was a fun show, actually. I took John Starks with my first pick. I wanted to take Rafi Torres with my second, but he was off the board.
Like, my first pick would just be the Vancouver Canucks from 2010 to 2012.
Yes,
the entire organization.
The Sedin twins were an option on there.
Whole team.
They were nice guys, but still,
Kessler, Luongo. Way off topic now.
Way off topic. We've now turned into a hockey podcast. No, what I was going to say was what you just said was exactly what I just got done saying a few minutes ago, which was, okay, you can't just be stripping everything down and leaving it bare, because this is still an important year for Justin Fields. And so you better still get him help on the offensive line. You got to get him weapons to throw the ball to. So, like, it may seem counterintuitive, and I'm just throwing this out as a hypothetical, but, like, let's say you trade Khalil Mack and then 4 days later sign Amari Cooper. You can look at that like, what are the Bears doing? Are they rebuilding or what? No, you have to get the most out of Justin Fields this year. And by the way, that also includes having a good defense still. So related with the assets you have to turn that into draft capital you can smartly use. And you better get the pick right? Because, whether or not Ryan Poles got fleeced on this will be dependent on what the pick ends up being and what Khalil Mack, quite frankly, goes on to do the next few years.
Can I argue that he's going to play Robin to Bosa's Batman?
Probably. Dude.
Think about that. Like,
they're still like 1 and 1A though. That's a pretty good tandem.
Is he a top 5 pass rusher, Khalil Mack? And I'm including all defensive linemen.
I think the numbers show that as a Bear, he was still in the top 10.
As a Bear, I feel like some numbers have been on the decline. I feel like
they've definitely been on the decline, and a lot of those numbers are.
Let me pull a story up. Go ahead, keep talking.
No. I think overall he comes in the top 10, but a lot of the bulk of those numbers were from year one, from 2018, when he was a first-team All-Pro. And
that's part of it too. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing what Khalil Mack is as a player. I'm not. He's an outstanding special football player, and I was all on board for that trade in 2018 because it was an all-in move. You saw what that did for that team that year. But his best game still was his first game for the Bears.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm distracted because Kevin Fishbane has jumped into our comments.
Again?
And he is asking if I have thought about wearing a different sweatshirt for each podcast in a day. I will have to say, I am working on my wardrobe. You have to understand that we have lived in a pandemic for the last 2 years, right? And there hasn't been a whole lot of updating to the wardrobe. I now am dropping my suits because we don't wear suits on CHGO. And so this is a brand new sweatshirt. It's actually the first day I'm wearing it, and it's getting its use because it has been on 4 podcasts today, and it is very, very bright green. I promise you it is not this green in person, but for some reason on these on the cameras, I look like a lime.
That is a great sweatshirt to wear this weekend in Chicago.
I wore it for you.
St. Patrick's Day. It's the month of St. Patrick's Day. All Chicagoans know what this weekend means.
St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, it'd be nice if
It
it was
does
going to be
feel like that, though.
Why
Like
is it going
every
to
week we got something?
23 degrees on Saturday?
Did you see what the temperature is going to be on Sunday?
Yeah, so are we moving this to Sunday now? Is that the deal?
I believe that is the date of the South Side Parade and the Northwest Side Irish Parade.
Oh.
So the neighborhood parades will be a bit more livelier.
So I should be going to Edison Park on Sunday is what you're saying?
Correct.
Ooh, that's actually intriguing. I might actually have to do that.
I'll be here.
Because last year we went to McHenry, and it was like close to 60 degrees and sunny. It was beautiful out. But, all right. Yeah, I'm just getting, yeah, that's what it is. Maybe I'll just wear this for every podcast the rest of the month now.
Lucky? No.
Feeling lucky.
Feeling lucky.
Feeling lucky.
You think the Chargers are feeling lucky?
I think the Chargers are. If we look at this trade from that side of things, there's not a lot to criticize. I mean, because remember, the Bears are eating all the dead money. Like you're getting, and I've been saying this now for a while. One of the reasons why I thought a Khalil Mack trade could happen was because this contract is pretty team friendly. The risk is really just in 2022. If he plays to what Khalil Mack can still be, you're getting a bargain. And if he doesn't, you can get out of it.
I think the question is, can he still be that? I did remember doing an article on Khalil Mack at the beginning of the year about my concerns about him. This happened after the Rams game, where he basically had only like an assisted tackle, and the Bears got blown out by the Rams in week 1. So the alarm bells are going off for me. Yeah. If you just look at his career, I'm going to eliminate 2021 because he only played in 7 games. He was injured, wasn't the same player. But if you look at his career in 2-year increments, there is a noticeable decline in sacks, a huge decline in QB hits, a minor decline in pressures, forced fumbles remain the same. And the QB hits always stood out to me. Like from 2015 to 2016, he ranked 8th in QB hits. In 2019 and 2020, he ranked 42nd. And everybody's, quarterback hits. That's still pressure on a quarterback. It's not like some subjective stat that pressures can be, whether it's PFF or whomever is grading that film. Like QB hits are QB hits. That is a quarterback being touched by the pass rusher, by the rusher. And he was 42nd in QB hits from 2019 to 2020. I know Pro Football Focus has always viewed Khalil Mack favorably, but the lack of QB hits, like the lack of games that he fully took over, like from the 19 season on, I felt like stood out to me because this is what you're paying him to do, to take over games like we've seen TJ Watt do, like we've seen Aaron Donald do. I don't think we saw enough of that from Khalil Mack the past couple seasons. And I'm eliminating 2021 because of injuries, but those seasons that he played in full, 19 and 20, did you see a lot of games where he just took him over?
No, there's still a few sprinkled in there, but, and even I think it was in 20 or 19 or both, like, wasn't the talk at the end of the year, like, oh, Khalil Mack, yeah, he finished the year, but he was playing hurt the whole time. He wasn't himself, right? So, like, it's still some of the nagging injuries, too. But here's again where I want to get to the Chargers side of this, because we always talk about this with players, and fit is important. And one of the things we talked about in the Chuck Pagano years was that he didn't necessarily know how to scheme up the pass rush in the same way that Vic Fangio did.
Great point.
So, at the risk of falling into the trap that sometimes we always do in like, oh, if a player can only be like he was in 2018, which, oh, by the way, was 4 years ago, he is going to the Chargers. Brandon Staley. We know those two guys hit it off in Chicago. We know Brandon Staley rightly deserves credit for some of that season. And so I think in terms of fit, the Chargers can get more out of Khalil Mack than maybe a different team would if he was going there. And so it's one of many of the reasons why I totally understand why the Chargers are making this deal on their end.
It's a matter of expectation, too. You're not expecting 2018 Khalil Mack to go to Los Angeles. You're not. You shouldn't. No. Brandon Staley, he's not. He's a realist as they come.
Well, and like I always get killed for my 13-3 prediction. I think the prediction that really doesn't get brought up enough, that somehow flies under the radar all the time, is that time Adam Johns predicted Khalil Mack would get 20 sacks in 2019.
But that's part of the point, right?
Expectations, yes.
Expectations. Like, you sign a guy to the richest contract in team history, make him the highest paid player in football. Damn it, I want 20 sacks.
No, I
want him to be defensive player of the year. That is the expectation. Good point. I forgot about that. Yeah. 13-3 does stand out for you. That's like just like lingers there.
But I'll take this in my grave. It wasn't a bad trade. The original Khalil Mack trade. It's the problem was that they did not give Khalil Mack the offense. They didn't fulfill the others. Really, the quarterback. For some reason, that's the podcast.
Add Matt Nagy to this conversation.
Yes, Matt Nagy. I think the offense and the quarterback failure and the head coach failure, all of that, far outweighs the Khalil Mack failure. And, who knows how it would have played out if you had the offense, but 18 could have been even better than it was. And 19 would have been better than it was. And that was supposed to be the window where they were really good. And so it didn't fall apart because Khalil Mack didn't live up to expectations. It fell apart because the offense sucked.
Yeah.
And that's why Ryan Pace is gone. And that's why Matt Nagy's gone. And that's why they're starting over and they're in this position. So I actually think Ryan Poles did a decent job here to get what he still could out of that. Move on, start over. It'll be interesting to see when the dust settles what it all looks like. But I said this earlier. I think it's a great trade for the Chargers. I think it's a reasonable, understandable trade for the Bears.
Great way to put it. This was a Rams, like trading for Khalil Mack was a Rams-like trade before the Rams started doing all the trades that they made.
Yeah, it was.
Like parting with first-round picks to go all in a little bit. The Rams get praised for it. It's worked out. Didn't work out for the Bears, but that's what it was. A Rams move before the Rams actually did it.
Well, the Rams went out and got the quarterback, though, that put it all together. They realized what they didn't have, and I still remember we said it during that Khalil Mack podcast, the original one, when they traded for him. They were doubling down on Mitch Trubisky.
Yes.
They went all in on Mitch, and then they doubled down when they went out and got Khalil Mack. And that's the part that didn't work. Whether you want to put that blame on Mitch, whether you want to put it on Matt Nagy, whether you want to put it on Ryan Pace and the pieces that he failed to put around that offense, it's all of the above. But I'll blame all of that way before I'll blame Khalil Mack.
Which brings us to Justin Fields again.
Yes.
The Bears have ample cap space now for 2022. More. $6 million in savings. Not a lot. That's a player. That's a starter. A lot more in 2023. I'm really intrigued to see what this plan from Ryan Poles does now offensively. What it means for his offensive line. How serious is he about committing resources, not just draft picks, but money to his offensive line now? Because you still need to see development. You need to help him. We talked about this at the beginning of the podcast. This is not a full rebuild. It just can't be. You need to add around Justin Fields. You need to keep him upright. Like, his development for 2022 is important for 2023, just like all that cap space you got from the Khalil Mack trade is for 2023. You need to see progress. So in 2023, you could decide what you really need to add when you have all that cap space. You need to see progress from Justin Fields this year.
And another point I want to stress, by the way, we are going to take questions here on video for anyone who wants to jump in.
Here we go.
Yep. So I think, let's see if I can remember how this works. I think Kent, our guy, our producer, will throw in the StreamYard link in there, right? And then people just request to come in. Kent, there it is in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that StreamYard link. If you want to jump in, you have the capable of going on video. Click on that link. He'll get you set up. He'll communicate with us who's ready to go, and we will call on you and bring you in here. But one point I want to bring in too, before we do that, Johns. So I think the obvious thing is now they have a ton of flexibility in 2023, right? But let's not forget, you can structure these contracts in a way where your hit's not very big in 2022, and you can put more of the onus on 2023. So you could still sign somebody next week and take advantage of that 2023 flexibility that you just created by taking Khalil Mack off the books. So yeah, it's only $6 million this year. Don't get hung up on that too much, because you really just increase your flexibility going forward, and that can still help you next week. You don't have to wait till next year to take advantage of that. And that's why this thing got done now and not in a few weeks. So before everyone gets all upset about, oh, it's only a second round pick or whatever, you got to think about it that way. You got to think about the big picture.
Sign a left tackle. Sign Ryan Jensen. Ryan Jensen he strikes me as that ideal free agent signing for Ryan Poles. I agree. It's the identity. It's the experience. It's the violence that he brings, that tone-setting violence. A guy who's going to pick up Justin Fields, a guy who's going to get upset if somebody hits Justin Fields. That's what you need. It's what Ryan Pace wants. Ryan Poles.
Ooh, I think that's the first time that's happened.
Yeah. It's happened a lot in writing.
We need to have like a button ready for every time we do that, because you know what's going to happen.
No.
Like, I don't know if that's the right one, but we got to have a special. I'm gonna work on that.
Mike Glennon.
Yeah.
The big Mike Glennon, no. But you know what I mean? Eric Fisher, left tackle. Mm-hmm. It needs, I feel like you're going to hear a lot of talk about needing draft picks, and, making use of the draft and building to the draft. All GMs say that.
Yeah.
But you got to protect Justin Fields now. And you're right, though. There's flexibility now gained through this Mack trade.
Yeah.
Can I ask you? Let me ask you a question right away.
Oh, I know what I was going to say real quick. Olin, he likes Ryan Jensen a lot. He knows him and agrees that he'd be a good fit in terms of like the nastiness they need. But he doesn't know that fits what Ryan Poles talked about last week about getting lighter and quicker. So just a counterpoint.
Can he get lighter?
I don't know.
It sounds like Olin Kreutz is trying to, recruit him to his gym.
Ooh, yeah, maybe. All right, what question were you going to ask me?
How far does this teardown go defensively? Robert Quinn, Eddie Jackson,
that's what
Eddie
I mean.
Goldman.
I don't know. I mean, I think Eddie Goldman's a candidate. I don't know though that necessarily. Let me think about that. Let's bring in Sam here and get a question. But I think that's a relevant conversation here that we should get into before we get out of here. But what's up, Sam?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, yep. We got you.
Hey, I was just wondering, do you think it seems like we used to have the all the money on the defensive side of the ball with Mack leaving? Is it going to be making the switch? Are they going to be more offensive heavy or try evening it out a bit?
Yeah, we talked about this briefly earlier in the show. Yes, I would hope the investment shifts back towards offense. I think you've seen that with Trey Burton, Allen Robinson. Like, they've tried. But you're talking about a more serious commitment, I think, in the trenches, because the defensive line salaries far outweighed what they were paying the guys in the offensive line. And I know they had some young guys up front. They took some one-year flyers on Jermaine Ifedi, Jason Peters. It's a long list of guys they took one-year flyers on. That's where I would like to see more balance. Instead of not overpaying, instead of committing so much to the defensive line, those big boys on the offensive line too.
Yeah, I think you'll start to see that balance out a little bit here. And that's
It
again,
helps. It helps to have a GM who played guard.
right. And like, I know everyone wants to like overreact to this trade. It's not overreaction. This is a huge trade that happened today. Like, let's not minimize it. It's a massive trade that happened. But I still like, let's wait a week or two to see what the whole thing looks like. Like, let's see what the next move is. And I know a lot of people
if you're talking about draft picks, you probably won't see what it really is, what it's defined as for a year or two.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and at least a couple months.
48, pick 48.
Yeah. So now they have 39, 48, and 71.
See what they do with 48.
All right. We got a duo coming up next. Jason and Charlotte with a sweet, obvious shirt as well. What's up, Jason?
Hey, what's up, guys? I got an upset little girl here who's missing Khalil Mack already.
Sorry, Charlotte. Sorry, Charlotte. We don't make the moves.
So I was wondering, do you think with polls, what should be our objective for this year? Obviously, patience being the key, I would guess. And then next year kind of splurge onto a bigger stage? Or is it, hope for a few offensive linemen in free agency draft, maybe trade up for Chris Olave? I don't know. But what are your guys' thoughts on that going forward now?
I think, thank you for the question, Jason and Charlotte. I think it's still about the quarterback. Like I think a year from now when we're doing this podcast, like we're talking about how did year 2 go for Justin Fields and how did Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, and Luke Getsy, what were their roles and however that played out, right? How did the coaching go? What the decisions that Eberflus made in game, how did that affect things? And did Ryan Poles give Justin Fields enough to succeed? Because like that's what we just talked about this last calendar year. And that still all matters to me for a team, especially now that I think we all have realistic expectations. They're not going to win the NFC North this year. So can Ryan Poles put Justin Fields in a better position to have success than the last regime? I think that's really, when you ask that question, that's how I will specifically answer it.
Well, I feel like patience is an important word because George McCaskey needs to have it for Ryan Poles. Ryan Poles needs to have it for Matt Eberflus. Matt Eberflus needs to have it for his first-time play caller, Luke Getsy. Luke Getsy needs to have it for his young second-year quarterback who was learning his offense. So that patience must apply to all levels of this organization. But at the same time, you still want to see tangible progress. It can't be as bad as this year. It just can't be. You need to see success. You need to see Justin Fields lead you to a couple wins. You need to see passer ratings hovering around 100.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. How about a completion percentage around 65? Some weeks it flirts with 70. You want to see progress. So patience applies to all levels of this team. But you still want to see your young quarterback do well.
Yeah, the patience is going to be key here. That's the thing. But,
And George McCaskey, Adam, man, like how often have we heard him say, I'm not a patient man?
Yeah. But I think he was with Pace and Nagy. I mean, to give him that last year.
He was with Pace. He was. Here we go again.
Remember, Poles reports straight to George now. I don't know how that really changes anything, but
no Ted Phillips buffer.
Yeah. Because I still think the first time Poles goes to George for something, George is just gonna go over to Ted and be like, "Yeah, what do you think about this?"
We got a question from Corey.
Yeah, what's up, Corey?
What's up, fellas? So got 2-2s now. What do you think the likelihood is that we trade into the first round, possibly get one of those 2 Ohio State receivers?
Well, look, Corey, it certainly gives you the option to do it now, right? Like, I don't even know how much of a possibility that would have been before. So you at least have that capital to go do it. I still think that quantity still matters here, though, and there has to be a shift in that regard, right? Ryan Pace over the last, especially I think like 3 or 4 years, made among the fewest picks in the league, and some of that was obviously because they traded for Khalil Mack, but also 2 quarterback trades in the first round. If it's for the right player, I'm not going to criticize it, but I still think there's an overwhelm. It's more likely that they sit pat or move back, I'd say.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Corey. Yeah, I would say with the Khalil Mack trade being the best indication we have yet, if he can, I think he wants to add picks. I think that's where Ryan Poles' evaluations are with this team. I do think he should spend some money in free agency, specifically on that offensive line. But in terms of trading up, I don't know if they're in position to do that right now. I just don't think so. There are so many needs, and you're right, Adam, in terms of relating Ryan Poles' draft selections, just in terms of quantity to the rest of the league, like the Ravens and the Packers and who else? What's the other? The Patriots, like the best drafting teams, have drafted like considerably more players than the Bears in the Ryan Pace era. Just more swings at more positions, more needs filled, better depth, maybe a home run hit here or there. The Bears need more quantity, more swings at filling out their roster right now.
Johns, I want to ask you a question real quick, because I'm still seeing on Twitter like pushback and disbelief that Ryan Poles did not get a first-round pick back for Khalil Mack. And like I get maybe the surprise that he wasn't, but let me ask you this. If you say no to the trade because you can't get a first-round pick and you just keep Khalil Mack, what's the best case scenario?
You're going through this again maybe next year?
Right. I mean,
what if he gets hurt again?
I think the best case scenario is you're still trading him a year from now, and maybe he had a good year, and maybe you're getting a first-round pick next year. But what are the chances that that's realistic?
I just think people are hung up.
And then, by the way, you're taking the cap hit next year.
Yeah.
Instead of this year.
Which is more than this year, I think.
Yeah, I think it is too. So
I think people are hung up that it costs multiple first-round picks to acquire the guy.
Yeah, that was a different point in his career, man.
Yeah,
he was he was like the best defensive player in the league back then.
That doesn't matter. Exactly. What's the sunk cost fallacy or something like that? Like, it doesn't matter what happened in 2018.
Right.
What you have is a player who's coming off injured reserve, appeared in 7 games? 7? And yes, I know he's played in every single game before that for the Bears. But I could tell you, Adam could tell you, he was on the injury report.
Yeah.
People from the Bears would tell you that he wasn't the same physically because he was dealing with certain things.
Look, the reality is your car is worth less after 50,000 miles, whether it's a nice car or not. Okay. And now it's got an accident on it too, on the report. You know what I mean? Like expecting to get expecting to get the same value. And I understand that 1 first-round pick's not the same, but it's just not the market. It's just I understand what you want the market to be. It's just not what the market was. And it doesn't surprise me either. It always seemed like second-round pick was the best case scenario.
The Ravens, Patriots, and other teams are praised for getting rid of players before it's too late, right? Understanding that they could have a player that's on the decline and maybe it's best to move on. They are known for that. I think that applies here. I really do. Sure, the return arguably could have been better, but we'll never know. We don't know how many teams are really interested in trading for Khalil Mack. Maybe that's a sign right there about his value out there.
All right, let's sneak in a few more questions before we get out of here. I think Jackson is up next.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Nothing much. So my question is, do you think that Robert Quinn's career year in 2021 made Ryan Poles feel better about trading Mack, or is he also going to be playing on another team next season or this season?
Is that a Cleveland Guardians hat?
Yes, it is. It's been a roller coaster day.
Just happy to have Cleveland Guardians baseball back.
Thanks for the question, man.
I was so distracted by the hat, I forget the beginning of it.
Robert Quinn.
Okay.
Do you think he played a role in Ryan Poles' reasoning to get rid of Khalil Mack?
Well, probably in that it's not like the cupboard's completely bare now at pass rusher. Now, if you're making a list of players who are ripe for regression, Robert Quinn has to be near the top of the list, if not at the top of the list, if only because it's unrealistic to expect him to get 19 sacks again, right? Like, at his age, also his history in his career where you have up year, down year, up year, down year, he's not going to be the same guy. But he also, like the tape shows, he
had that bend.
That bend was
Gumby was
there.
back, yeah.
So if he's healthy, that's a big if, just like it was for Khalil Mack. If he's healthy, I think it is realistic to expect the Bears to still have a decent pass rush. They played without Khalil Mack for half the season in 2021, and the defense wasn't fantastic, but it was still solid.
The most impressive thing about Robert Quinn's season is that not only was Khalil Mack missing for part of it, but Akeem Hicks was missing for part of it.
Yeah.
And they didn't have many leads in games.
Well, and that's probably what you're looking at if you're Ryan Poles. Like, you've seen this defense on tape without those two players. So you think with the new scheme, the players you're going to add, the players you're going to continue to get more out of, like Jalen Johnson, Roquan Smith, can you scheme it up in a way that you could still keep the defense pretty good? And Eberflus did that in Indy without any major pass rushers. So I can understand the logic there in taking this risk, especially if you can flip it and get Justin Fields more pieces on offense.
I still think Eberflus saw value in probably keeping Khalil Mack. Probably sees value in keeping Robert Quinn. But I'll go back to my point. If Ryan Poles and his staff see potential regression coming from Robert Quinn, if you're going to praise the Ravens and you're going to praise the Patriots for making moves where they beat the regression, I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Poles made another and dealt his now second best pass rusher, or now the best pass rusher on his team.
Let's go rapid fire here with these last few. Just want to make sure we get as many as possible. Let's see who's up next. I think Martin is up next.
Yeah, where do the Bears go now that in free agency, basically? So obviously huge trade, but where do we go next in free agency? Do we go aggressive in free agency or do we take it easy?
Here's the thing. We got a first-time GM, and
we're learning here.
And this is a pretty big move. I think we're learning he's not afraid to make a big move, even if it's a move to get rid of.
There's some fearlessness here. He's got some gumption. He's not afraid to be bold. Now, Ryan Pace wasn't afraid to be bold, but this is, I guess, in reverse. Not an acquisition. It's parting with a veteran for picks. I like to see investment in the offensive line. I would.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
I'd like to see them sign at least one big name in free agency for their offensive line. I'm not saying you have to pay a guy the richest contract this year in free agency for a lineman, but at least bring in a name, some experience, because I think Justin Fields will benefit from that experience up front, especially a center.
Yeah, I think, look, I don't know if it necessarily has to be that top tier free agents. I got to say, though, the more I look, and I'm usually a guy that's like, okay, be careful in free agency because you're always going to be overpaying. But I think by the end of next week, heck, maybe even by the end of Monday, right, when these deals start coming in and are agreed to, I think I'd like to see the Bears get at least one big fish in that free agent pool on offense. Whether that's
a first wave free agent, even though Poles is saying he wants the second and third waves.
Are you going to criticize a Terran Armstead deal? A Ryan Jensen deal? Amari Cooper deal? Like, I'm not going to.
No.
There's not many options out there, guys.
I might
like,
call Ryan Poles a liar, but that's fine.
Well, hey, we've seen the Ryan Pace playbook, right? Whatever is said at the combine, do the opposite.
Exactly.
Like we can't just hold these guys to their word for everything they say in front of a microphone at the NFL combine. There's a lot of smoke that purposely gets put out there.
Do you remember when Mark Potash asked Phil Emery why GMs lie?
Who was it? Was it Rich Campbell who asked John Fox why he lied all the time? And John was like, well,
John didn't even know he was lying. That was
like,
part of the problem.
I give you the injury report, and that's all I have to do. Like, doesn't benefit me to give you any more.
And there was just a bunch of nonsense and mumbling. So you almost forgot what the question was. And filled up our soundboard, though.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, hey, that's going to do it for all of the live questions that we take on the show. A lot of great comments. Appreciate everybody watching. I think there's like over 1,000 people watching right now live. That is awesome. And we always appreciate the support from you guys. Man, it's been a crazy week, and it just ended with a crazy trade. And, oh, by the way, baseball's back too, which is nice.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Stop trying to cheat the White Sox out of another title. Baseball.
It's like the NFL. Oh, baseball's back. Okay. Schefter, you can announce that trade now.
Yeah, right? Like, did you enjoy that 35 minutes you had to celebrate the labor deal coming together? Because the Bears traded Khalil Mack too.
Yeah. Well, guess what? The NFL's oldest franchise is setting their best pass rusher.
Yeah. Well, hey, congrats to the 5 Charger fans out there on their
ouch, man.
Pass rusher. What? Am I wrong?
No. I miss San Diego.
I know. San Diego's a great place. Oh,
fun trip a few years ago. 5 years ago.
It was a long time ago now. Zach Miller had a great catch in that game.
The one-hander?
Yeah.
The one-hander.
Jay Cutler played in that game. That's how long ago that was.
My one memory from that game is a teammate of Zach Miller's not being happy with his success in the post-game interviews.
Marty Bennett?
Good call.
Yeah. Well, and then Ryan Pace traded him.
Right? That happened.
Yeah. All right. Again, thank you to everybody. Make sure you're following us at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. You can find me on CHGO now, the CHGO Bears podcast, allchgo.com to read all the coverage from this Khalil Mack trade. And, of course, Johnsy, Kevin will have it covered on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. It's where you go to get all that content. Make sure you check it out. If you're watching right now on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. If you haven't already, hit those notifications, because if you have those notifications lined up, you should have seen it come across your phone that we were going live today, and hopefully that helped you out. So if you missed it, that's a good way to cover that. And, of course, you can listen to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We appreciate those of you who consume it that way as well. We are out of here. We'll be back next week. Prepare for way more news. Probably at least one emergency podcast I would expect in there, depending on what happens in free agency. But it is the start of the new league year next week, so it's exciting time. Let's just hope it doesn't end with a $10 million deal for Andy Dalton.
Doesn't that feel good? The Bears are done for that for now, everybody.
Yes. All right, we'll talk to you next week.
See ya.